as a gatherer and protector of the Russian lands, and a prescient statesman who laid the foundations of a strong, united, centralized state, resulting in the union of one great family of equal peoples, languages, cultures, and religions. Putin pointed out that the prince's choice of Christianity became the joint spiritual source for the peoples of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, laying the foundations of the morals and values that define our life even to the present day. Despite what one reads in textbooks and hears in official pronouncements, Russia, especially by European standards, is a relatively young state. Its history as an independent polity officially begins less than 600 years ago, in the 1470s, when Ivan III, the first ruler of the Grand Duchy of Muscovy to call himself Tsar, challenged the suzerainty of the Mongol Khans. At stake was not only the independent status of the rulers of Muscovy, the principality centered on the city of Moscow, but also their control over other Rus lands, in particular Novgorod, whose independence from Moscow the Mongol Khans sought to maintain. It was then that the Kievan roots of the Muscovite dynasty and church helped form a powerful myth of origin that distinguished Muscovy from its immediate Mongol past and nourished its self-image as heir to Byzantium. Most of Russia's wars were fought in its immediate East Slavic neighborhood, motivated and justified by its claim to be the legitimate political, cultural, and religious successor to the medieval state of Kievan Rus and its Byzantine heritage. Even the extension of the Soviet borders westward in the course of World War II was often justified with references to the Rus princes and their military exploits. Despite Russia's long history of imperial conquest, its vision of gathering the Rus lands, initiated during the reign of Ivan III, was fulfilled only during the brief period from 1945 to 1991, less than half a century. In those years of superpower status, Moscow was able to extend its rule to the westernmost regions of the old Kievan state, settled predominantly by Eastern Slavs, Ukrainian Galicia, Bukovina, and Transcarpathia. The Russian elite's claim for the Kievan inheritance developed from a largely dynastic and religious concept into an ethno-national one with the start of the modern era. As the Russian Empire embraced the idea of nationality in the course of the 18th century, it created a particular model of Russian nationhood that included today's Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians, along with imperial elites of non-Slavic origins that were Russified in political and cultural terms. The Russian Revolution began the process of untying this imperial knot of Russian national identity by assigning the status of separate nationalities to the Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians. Nevertheless, the Soviet project was anything but consistent in terms of its nationality policies. The communist government centralized the decision-making process in Moscow, used the Russian language across the whole expanse of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, promoted the cultural Russification of non-Russians, and in doing that, created conditions for the development of post-Soviet Russian imperialism after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. The emancipation of Russian national identity from this neo-imperialism is the main challenge besetting the country's current search for a new identity. Russia today has enormous difficulty in reconciling the mental maps of Russian ethnicity, culture, and identity with the political map of the Russian Federation. In other words, it has a major problem in responding to the key demand of modern nationalism, famously defined by Ernest Gellner as a political principle which holds that the political and the national unit should be congruent. Do Russia's present-day political borders coincide with the borders of the Russian nation? The answer depends on